I'll suck. There we go. It's a blessing for us to have met you. Okay, it's not the other way around. We are so grateful every chance we get to try and help people in prison understand, or going into prison understand, change happens. And what do you do for a living?
I was owning labs, toxicology labs.
Oh, you do? So you're in the medical business?
I was. I've shut them down now, but I got some other projects I'll be looking at once I come back home.
And we have another guy joining us. Hello, who's that? Hello?
Hi.
Hi. I'm Michael. What's your name?
Arthur Merson.
Hey, Arthur. How you doing? I was just listening to Jeff telling me he's about ready to surrender this week. Oh, shoot. I just remembered. I forgot to send an invite to somebody. Hold on while we wait here.
Okay.
I just think I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to connect with guys like you. Hold on a second. Let me send this. Let me send you the link now.
I'd rather meet under better circumstances.
Well,
I know,
what?
right?
This is a start. Okay. This is a start. And you can, let me add somebody, add. How do I do that? Invite. Okay. Default email. And I'm just going to send this link to this fella who I'm going to invite right now. He just got out of prison yesterday.
Wow.
And I told him, I said, well, he wants to work with us. And I like to provide jobs for people who just come in. Please click link below to join the webinar at 11.
What does that mean? You provide jobs? That's interesting.
So yeah, so good. I'm glad that you said that. I'm gonna talk with both of you guys about that. So let me just send that. Hi, Brandon. Boom. Okay, just tell this guy. I just sent him the link. I just sent you the link. I just sent you the link. Here it is. Hey, Joseph. Here it is.
Hey, Michael. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm just catching up here, trying to get last minute people to join. Can I take range? Yes. No problem. Text later. I'll text later. Okay. So the jobs, we're going to talk about that today because that's really what this is about, is thinking about. I know that anybody going into the system is really somewhat stressed out about the fact that I'm just going in today, but it's also important to realize every decision you make is going to have an influence on what you're going through, not only on being able to persuade the system to let you out earlier, but also on what you're going to do on the other side of this journey. Because it's really sad, but if somebody has a criminal background, sometimes it's hard to get started again. And that means it's hard to get started again if somebody is going to launch their own business and they need capital. Sometimes banks will fire you and not allow you to do business with them. Sometimes business partners will say, oh, you were convicted of a crime. I don't want to do business with you. Sometimes potential prospective clients won't want to do business with you. So the more we think about that, the earlier we think about that, the better we can position ourselves for, okay, how am I going to overcome that? And I really think that made all the difference in the world for me. And also when I contrast that with other people who are going into the system that face enormous challenges all the way through. They face challenges getting out of prison on time. They face challenges with staff members, with other people serving time. They face challenges when they come home and having liberty with their supervised release people and trying to get off of it. But the more I think about it, the better I can architect my path to get there. You know, I was just talking with Jeff, who was in the medical business, and sometimes that gets blocked off because now I got a conviction and maybe I can't bill Medicare, or Joseph, I know, was in the financial services industry and maybe I can't get a Series 7 license. Arthur, what kind of business did you do?
Well, I was in the financial background also, and before that, I used to own private schools. So
Yeah, so all of these are complications. And sometimes when we're going into the system, we get so wrapped up in where we are and what's happening, we can't think, wait a minute, I got to break out of this. And some of that I don't have the ability to control. Like I can't change what the judge did. I can't change the case manager I'm going to meet in the future. But change is neither good or bad. It's just how we respond to it. Unfortunately, when we get wrapped into the criminal justice system, sometimes we get locked into this system where we can't think about, oh, what should I be doing? What can I be doing? Instead, we think about what's happening to us. How did this happen to us? And I want to talk about the dangers of that, particularly when you're going into prison, but also when you are positioning yourself to come home from prison. And so I created this time, instead of doing a Word document for this webinar, I created a PowerPoint. And I'm going to share my screen with you because it's 8:32 in California, 11:32 for people on the East Coast. And I kind of like to stay to this schedule to the extent I'm able, but we'll do it the same way where I'm going to go through these different sections here. I'm going to try to make it big. Can everybody see this section, this slide?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this webinar became relevant to me, unfortunately, where I learned I've got to create this webinar because I failed one of the earlier people that were part of our community. When I say I failed him, it's because he wrote me from prison and told me about a challenge he is having. And that challenge, I know I could have prepared him better so that he would not have had that challenge. But I can't do it unless I know more about the situation. Now, pretty much everybody that works with our team has worked with other people. They've worked with Justin or Sam or Larry or other people. And in order to understand why that is, it's important to kind of have the backstory of how we started and what we do. Not very few people are going to have served, multiple decades in prison like I served. And we all have different roles in our company, but the other people, everybody that's associated with me is somebody either I met in prison or somebody that came out of prison and needed a job and wanted to do something. So through the nonprofit, that's one of the things that we do. That's my role, is to try and change the system by policy changes, helping government leaders understand what's wrong with it, helping government prison administrators understand what do they need to do so that more people come back to society strong, with their dignity intact, and with opportunities to prosper instead of shutting them off from the world. How do we empower them so that they can be a part of society again? And it's helping people in prison understand you've got to start sowing seeds today for what you want to become. But if I don't know the terrain, I don't know, I can sow the wrong kind of seed. There's a story I remember, excuse me, I've got a little bit of a voice challenge today, but there's a story, I don't know, for those of you who have read the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I remember reading that back in the late 1980s, I think, or maybe the early 1990s when I was in prison. And it gave this analogy about a group of people that are lost in the forest. And on one side of the forest, they'd only have to walk about 400 yards and they'd be back in the community and be able to live. But if they walked in the wrong direction, they just keep getting deeper and deeper into the forest, and they could perish. So the analogy is, one guy climbs up a tree because the people, he says that one guy climbed up a tree so he could get a better perspective, and he looked around at the entire forest and saw told all the people because they were chopping down trees and trying to carve their path to get to liberty. But the other guy said, hey, you're going the wrong way. And we got to go that way. That's the critical thinking skills that I'm talking about that I want to reveal in today's webinar. I want to make sure that we're going in the manner that's going to get us back to society, to liberty at the soonest possible time. And the only way we can do that is if we truly understand the landscape of where we are going. And I want to welcome the new people that just joined us. Don't worry, we've only been talking for a few minutes, and I was just kind of giving a background on what we're talking about today. But there is on the bottom of the screen these sections that you can give comments. And so if anybody has a comment, please feel free to ask anything as we go. Where is the comment section? I'm actually, oh, the chat. It's on the chat section. So I've got my chat window open. I'm going to leave it open. If anybody wants to intervene, feel free to either unmute yourself or leave a chat. I'm going to be periodically sharing my screen and going off and not sharing my screen as we spend this time together this morning. So on this screen, and I am recording this as well. So if anybody has to do something else, please, feel free to leave this. I'll be sending out a webinar link by tomorrow if you want to watch it, or listen to it on iTunes is fine as well. But when we're going in there, if we don't understand this landscape, we can make things significantly harder for ourselves. And that really became apparent to me when I heard from a guy who just surrendered a couple of weeks ago, and he told me about a challenge that he is having. And really, that challenge comes because we didn't talk about how prison is really different from the outside. How is it different for you and for your family as well? Because you're not the only one that's serving this sentence. Your wife is serving this sentence with you. Your children are serving this sentence with you. Your friends are to the extent that you've got a supportive community, they're serving this sentence with you. And so it's important for us to be thinking not only about ourselves, but also about the people that we love and the people who love us, and how are our decisions going to influence them. And that may seem like common sense to somebody, but if you don't know that environment, you may say things in there that you think are normal that are not, and that can bring problems, as one member of our community is experiencing right now. And I'm trying to help as many people as I can, but I have to start by really telling you these stories. So we need to be talking about critical thinking skills. My wife is on the other side, and she's sending me texts periodically to give me reminders about the story. So this fella, he thought he was going to a minimum security camp because that's what his lawyer told him, that he would be going to a camp. But he didn't really do all the preparations beforehand. And when he found out where he was designated to, he got designated to what's called a detention center, which is a little bit different. And it's important to realize every prison where I go, there are skills that will help me navigate it more effectively. But I've always got to start thinking about, okay, how am I defining success? How am I going to get through it? And that's what I want to be talking about today. And of course, I always make myself available at the end or through the webinar where somebody can ask me a question, and I'm going to be happy to respond. But when I'm responding and when I'm talking about these programs, I am talking about it from my experience. I'm not God, and I'm not, the master. I'm just a person that went through it, and I saw how to go through it. And one thing that always helped me is to understand where I am. What do I have to do to get through this with my dignity intact and with opportunities to prosper? I don't only have to think about myself. I have to think about my family and friends. I have to think about the people that are around me, including the staff members and the other people in prison. Who are they? What are they going through? What challenges do they have? What do they expect from me? What are they going to try and get from me? There's a lot of the members of our community are from the sales profession, And, they may remember the wisdom of Zig Ziglar, who said, if you can help other people get what they want, you can get everything you want. And that's what we want to do. We want to think about these other people and then make decisions clearly. Please write detail about your group hiring after, and if one can get a letter stating that in order to improve chance of getting that sooner. But I am very happy to provide that letter. We can create something along those lines about what we can do, but let's talk about that after the webinar, about what we can do. Okay, because it's, for me, this is a lifelong passion for me, because I was in there my whole life. But I don't think it's going to be the same for everybody else. But sometimes we can provide a bridge that says, hey, maybe there's a role that you can have working with us on the other side of this journey. And I want to show you how to do it. But it's not only us, it's anybody. Where else can I work? What else can I be doing? How do I do this? Let's talk about that together, because the sooner you start talking about it, the better off you're going to be. So that's why the first slide here is really about critical thinking skills, and also understanding this analogy. Forgive me if I've used it before and you've heard it before. I just want to show it to you because I think it really illustrates the issue of when you're in a problem, right? And I stole this analogy, part of it, and I created part of it. And one of them is, I remember being in a speech and I heard a speaker say, when is the best time to plant an oak tree? Do any of you guys have the answer to that?
Yeah, when you're ready. When there's water available.
I'll tell you what the speaker said, because he asked that question to an audience, and everybody in the audience said either it's the summer, it's the winter, it's the fall, it's on a Saturday, it's in the morning, it's in the night, it's on a full moon, right? But then he gave the answer. He said the best time to plant an oak tree is 20 years ago. Okay. And all of us can look back to say where we were 20 years ago, and what would we have done differently if we knew then what we know now. But here's the part that I developed that analogy a little further. To get an oak tree, it's not just planting a seed. You got to dig a hole, you got to plant a seed, but then you got to nurture the seed, and you nurture that seed generally with fertilizer, and fertilizer is just shit. Okay.
Yeah.
And that seed has got to grow through a lot of shit before it becomes a strong oak tree. I need everybody on our webinar to recognize you are going to grow through a lot of shit. Okay. It's going to be stuff that is, to you, maybe undignified. To you, you may feel like, why am I here? I don't belong here. I've got a great education. I'm not like all of these other people. You don't have to convince me that. I know that's true. Okay. But you got to go through it. And the more, if you don't know about it, then you could be potentially putting yourself in a challenge like the one I'm going to describe a little bit later in our webinar that one of our member of our community is going through right now. So this is the first slide. Really think about defining success and using super strong critical thinking skills. Okay. So you're right, the afterlife is different. I want to save some of these comments until after I get, because I'm going to address some of these a little bit later in this critical thinking skills. So that is absolutely correct. What Arthur said or observed is that everybody is different. Everybody. Your age is going to influence your decisions. Your family, community is going to influence your educational background, your financial resources, right? If you're going into if you're a justice impacted person and you're going into this system, you are going to war. You've got to put that in your head. It's not a war that you can't win. You can win this war, but you may have to lose some battles along the way, and you've got to choose which battles am I going to fight. Okay? That's very different from the world out here. Why? Because you've got to be understanding the other people you're going to be around, and it's different. Okay? It's different. You know society because you've been living here your whole life, but when you get in there, you got to really be thinking about all the other members of your community. What are they going to expect? And what how do your decisions today influence that? The fellow that I told you about that is having a challenge right now that I'm trying to help him resolve, if he would have spoken with me earlier, I could have given him a strategy. I failed because I didn't deliver this webinar earlier on critical thinking. Okay, so engage with me here. If you have questions and you may not want to answer it in front of a community, send it in the chat to me and I'll address it anonymously, or send me an email or something so that I can create something that describes it. But I want you to be thinking about everybody in your community and what are they going to experience, but also how can you help or hurt the situation, okay? Because the staff are one group of people that may have interactions not only with you, an enormous influence over your life, but the staff will also have influence over your family's life. And this gives a different example that certainly my wife, Carol, who I married inside of a prison, learned this and became a master of it. But somebody just went in, their wife doesn't know how to deal with it. And here's the example. This fella was surrendering to prison, I think last Monday, but he had petitioned his judge to have an extension so he wouldn't surrender next Monday. He needed another 30 days to do a surgery and he wanted to get done. Well, the lawyers, I mean, I hope all of you have great lawyers that are there with you. This guy's lawyer was not that way and kind of dropped the ball and didn't ask on time. And the guy was supposed to surrender by noon on Monday, last Monday. So his wife dropped him. He waited till the very last minute, hoping to get a ruling from this judge, but he didn't get it. So like at 15 minutes to 12, the guy turned himself into the prison. And when he turned himself into the prison, his wife walked back to the car. And before she even got to the car, she got a notice on her phone at 12:04 that said the judge signed the order and the guy doesn't have to surrender.
Yeah.
So the wife goes back to the prison. And now she starts to argue and to try to advocate. No, I've got the judge's order right here. But the guards don't recognize her as a human being. She's the wife of a prisoner. And so, they threaten her and they do things like, they'll put their hands on their pepper spray and say, you have to leave the compound now, right? And the poor lady doesn't know how to respond to that. But there is a response. There is a response, and that response is always going to be, let's start by defining success. I've got to understand the policies and the procedures because that's the only way I can fight the administration, okay? That's the only way I can fight this bureaucracy. This is a massive bureaucracy. And if you understand it, if you understand both for you, but also how your family has to interact with it, you can help them. You can help them by thinking and talking about your family right now and said, hey, let's kind of make a commitment here. What's really, really important? And then say to yourself, if I know what's really, really important, I could say, I am going to make decisions, 100% commitment to get that. And there may be some challenges I got to face along the way. So if I said to Carol, I'll use Carol as an example, as I did when I told her in there, I said, my goal is to get out of prison at the soonest possible time with my dignity intact and go on to build my life. Is that your goal? And we make this joint said, yes, this is our goal. Well, then we understand sometimes there's going to be battles I have to lose. That battle of fighting the administration to get my husband out because a judge signed an order and I got it too late, that battle is lost. I don't want to fight that battle because he's in there. And I understand that these bureaucrats are not going to listen to the pleading wife saying, oh, please look, I just got that. They will not respond because it's a bureaucracy. The only thing they're going to respond to is a judge's order to them. And the judge didn't give that order. The judge gave a different order and said he can respond 30 days later. I can't change that. The lawyer, the only one that can change that is the judge. The judge would have to issue an order to the Bureau of Prisons, release this man. And that's not going to happen. So it doesn't make sense to get into that fight. You've got to know, as Kenny Rogers saying, know when to hold them, know when to fold them. Learn to fight the battles that are not going to advance you to what you want to get. And learn to fight the battles that are going to get you to success as you've defined success. And we'll get to more of that through this webinar. Did somebody say something? Okay. So remember what you're going to see in prison. You are going to see volatility and you are going to see injustice. Just expect that. It's a prison, okay? It's a prison. And I can think about all of the people in the prison and what motivates those people and how am I going to navigate my way through this challenge. I can't undo the challenges. I can show you the strategies that work for me, and I'm going to do that for you before the end of this webinar. But first, I've got to show you, this is a very different environment than society, okay? There are going to be staff perceptions that they think it's okay to intimidate you. So, not all, but some. They will want to have this very clear line of authority. And that authority is sometimes patronizing. It's sometimes intimidating. It sometimes feels threatening, okay? But you just have to start every conversation every day by kind of asking a question. And I don't mean to say this in a pejorative or a negative way, but just ask, who grows up and says, I want to live in I want to work in a prison, right? I mean, there's a lot of reasons that people go into corrections, but just think about those people and who they are and what motivates them. And to the extent that you do, I want you to make better decisions, okay? I want you to make better decisions and say, okay, I know who's here, okay? This is not an attack on you personally. They dehumanize people in prison, right? You're a number. I was number 163777004. In fact, I've got my card right here, 16377. That's who I was for 9,500 days. No big deal. I knew that's how they defined me. It's not how I define myself, okay? I don't care how they define me. I don't remember all of those people that were in prison before me, okay? They used to tell me I couldn't do this or I couldn't do that, or my job was to overcome that. That's your job. And if you stay focused on that and you get your family to stay focused on that, you are going to make better decisions. And those decisions have to be always focused on the goal. Okay, I see this one, Carol, that you're sending me. I've got it up here. My wife is sending me information here that's reminding me to talk about, what happens if you get labeled as kind of a muckraker in prison. Always challenging, always fighting, always trying to make the system respond to your needs and realizing, hey, I got to get through this system. Okay, don't try to bend the machine. The machine, that's my job. That's what I do every day. I try to bend the machine. And I did it when I was in prison, but I was serving 26 years and I didn't have the First Step Act. Okay. You guys, most people that are coming to our community through this channel, they're serving what in the Bureau of Prisons considers a low sentence. As crazy as it might seem to every one of you, anybody that has less than 10 years to serve or a 12-year sentence is a short-termer, okay? Get your head around that. If I'm not doing 12 years, I'm a short-term person in the Bureau's mind. I'm not saying you're a short-termer. If you're going to jail for 72 hours, it's awful for you, and I get it. But I'm here to help you navigate that. And we can navigate that if we understand it, and we understand what battles do I fight, what battles do I not fight and choose to let go. If I don't do that, I'm going to find myself fighting wars I don't want to fight. So just understand, there's going to be volatility, there's going to be injustice, and I'm going to make it through. No matter what, I'm going to make it through. I'm going to understand who the staff are. I'm going to understand what motivates them. Policy motivates them. Career growth motivates them, right? They have chosen a career path to support their families, and they want to be a correctional officer, and then a lieutenant, and then a special investigative services lieutenant, and then an associate warden, and a captain, and a warden. That's their career path over 30 years. They're serving time. And they're going to encounter 100,000 people serving time. In order for them to succeed, they've got to dehumanize you. So it's not personal, it's what they have to do. If you understand what to expect from them, you're going to be more successful at navigating them. Same thing with the other people serving time around you, okay? The people serving time around you, they may not be like you, okay? They may not have been business owners or financial services professionals or medical professionals. Some of them may have been car thieves, okay? Some of them may have been drug dealers, okay? Some of them may have been whatever, petty criminals. But in prison, they may view, those people in prison may view themselves as if they are some kind of influencer, okay? They may want to control who gets to watch TV. They may want to control who gets to use the laundry room. They may want to control who sits in one area of the prison. I want you to go in there with that mindset and understand, if I have that mindset, wherever they put me, there's a path to get through. If you have fears, let's talk about those fears. Let's understand how to get through it, because you can get through it. But in order to get through it, you got to start by understanding the environment, understand the lay of the land, okay? There's that saying that says, you know, who's the winner of a fight? The best way to avoid a fight, to win a fight, is to avoid it in the first place. And you can. I went through 26 years and never had a single altercation in prison. Not one. And I know you can do it as well. But it all starts with understanding, what battles am I going to fight? Understand all people. And that's kind of what takes us then to this third slide, is these relationships. How am I going to nurture them? How am I going to nurture my family, my friends, and do something interactive with them so that they can also stay on point? Because it's not easy to stay on point. It is not easy to stay focused when days are turning into weeks, and weeks are turning into months, and months are turning into years sometimes. And in some cases, years are turning into decades. There's going to be a lot of mechanisms and shiny objects competing for your time. And it's really easy to get involved in those shiny objects and get diverted. But those shiny objects can take you off path, okay? They can take you off path in a way that can keep you in prison longer, can lessen your level of liberty while you're in prison, and can make it harder for you when you come home. But if I understand it, I wonder, I'm going to try to test something here on this screen here, because I see this thing called the whiteboard, and I used to use this when I was teaching in a live person. And it's, you know, if I draw a point, can you guys see my screen? I think you can. Some's coming in. So I think you can see my screen. Oh my God, where did that whiteboard go? I want to go back to the whiteboard. I want to go back to that whiteboard. Show and finder. No, I don't know. All right, I'll be back. So if you're not muted, try to mute yourself so that unless you're going to say something. So, here's the whiteboard. I hope you can see the whiteboard. Yes, it says participants can see your whiteboard. So I draw a point right here, right? That's where you are right here. Here's where you want to go, right? This is home. That's where you want to go. That's success for you. Home and liberty. Now, you're going in, right? Now, the shortest distance here is that, a straight line. But if you're not focused and have a goal in there, you can, this happens to a lot of people. They end up making all these decisions that complicate them, and they never get here. They get here, and then something happens, and they end up back here, right? That's prison. That's prison. It is a messed up world. And so you've got to have these critical thinking skills to say, I got to get through, and to develop those critical thinking skills, it's about something much bigger than me, right? This program is much bigger than you. Those staff members that are running prisons, they're not focused on you. They don't care about you. They care about getting to the next stage of their career. And they may implement policies that exist right now that says, I'm going to block you from email. I'm going to block you from phone. I'm going to block you from visiting, like they're doing right now because of the pandemic, right? So there's some places you go and you might be in quarantine for 2 weeks, and it's not fair. And it may not have any medical necessity. It's just prison. And it's very important to help everybody in your community understand that. But most important, it's that you understand that. This is not the battle to fight, because that's bending the machine. Figure out how to navigate your way through that machine, or live that serenity prayer that says, know what battles to fight and know what battles to avoid, and give you the strength to get through whatever it is you have to get through. So we always want you thinking about other people, both in prison and out of prison. In this era, I really think it's because of the First Step Act, it's very important for you to document your journey. It's very important for you to memorialize all the steps that you are taking today, from the day that you were sentenced until the day you receive a letter that says you're free from supervised release and you're all on to build your life. The more you can document that, the stronger you are going to be in advocating for yourself when you face these challenges. But this is where I get to the point of the time where I say, I think I failed our community. And I failed it by not giving this webinar earlier. It's just that every day there's somebody new coming in, and anybody going into prison has to think about that environment. And I now got to tell you the background. So this fella had a relatively short sentence of like 9 months, I think. And with a 9-month sentence, you could be eligible for, under the current regime's rules, right? Because the current rules, the Keras Act, exists today, and it can have a big influence for a person with a sentence of less than, say, 20 months. Theoretically, that person can go home in 25% of the time. So if I have a sentence of 20 months, I can go home in 5 months or 4 months, 25%, 5 months, 5, 10, yeah, 20. I can go home in 5 months. That's the goal. Everything else should follow along the lines of those goals, okay? But this fella, he went to prison and he got approached by other people in the prison that kind of invited him to be a part of their community or their group. And by being a part of that group, they brought him to their room. And they then asked him, who here has a 5K1? Now, he doesn't know what a 5K1 is, nor does he know what the implications are of saying that you have a 5K1. And some of you may not know those implications. And I believe that I failed that guy by not helping him understand that. Now, a 5K1 is really simple. It means that you're giving the prosecutor, if you have a mandatory minimum sentence, during that mandatory minimum sentence, the judge has to give you that mandatory minimum. It may be 5 years, it may be 10 years, it may be 20 years, okay? The only way you can get under that, the only way the judge can get under that is if the prosecutor submits a 5K1 motion. You can't submit the 5K1 motion, only the prosecutor can. The only way the prosecutor is going to give that motion is if you are cooperating against somebody else. You're bringing somebody else to prison. Now, I make no judgment call on that whatsoever, okay? I don't. But I'm not everybody. Somebody in prison, some guy that's in prison for something stupid, that's when he's in prison for you. When you go to prison, that's the worst part of your life, because you have a home and you have a family and you have a business and you have a career and you have a future. But for that guy, prison's the top of the food chain. He loves the prison. He wants to be the king of the prison cell. He wants to be the mayor of the prison. Okay? And so he's going to try and filter out, hey, who's here on a 5K1? Okay? And that's what this guy did. He got himself in a situation where he got asked that question. I don't want you guys to be in that type of a situation. Whether you're going to a detention center like this guy went to, or camp, okay, you are never going to be in a situation where you're in danger, okay? If you're going to a medium security prison or a high security prison, that's a fundamentally different environment, and we will be having different conversations. But I know that if you're on this webinar, that means that the government viewed you as not a security threat because you're out on bond. So I can speak to you because I know from experience, you're either going to a minimum security camp or you are going to a detention center as part of a work cadre, which means you're going to be around other minimum security people. You're not going to be around high security people. You're going to be around people that don't have a documented history of volatility. So you're not in danger. So you should never get involved in a question or an altercation that's where you're talking about your crime if your crime has something to do with her bringing other people into prison. Because in prison, that's considered to be a snitch, okay? And I don't need to give a definition of what that is. Do I make a judgment call on it? I don't in any way. That's what a law-abiding citizen typically does. They accept responsibility, I respond, I make my decision, and then I go forward. But in prison, I've got to understand all of the people. And so I want to avoid ever getting involved in that situation. I want to seek first to understand my environment before I let my environment completely sink me down into this terrible adjustment strategy that this fellow's doing right now. That started with him writing me an email and saying, hey, I got approached by some guys. They invited me. I went to a room. I followed them into the room. And they asked me, who's 5K1? And I raised my hand. Yeah, I got one. There's no ups. It would seem to me that's just like logical. I don't want to talk about that. But apparently I failed to explain that. I don't want to ever make that mistake again. So that's the purpose of this webinar. Understand your environment and understand that other people in your environment may not be like you. When I was in prison, I used to find a huge value in being alone. And so I used to tell my wife, I'm going to go days without talking to anyone. And I try to measure, like 4 days, I didn't talk to one person except her. And I could only, sometimes it's not because I didn't want to talk to her. I couldn't talk to her because there was no phone access. Okay. She understood that if I didn't call her, it's because I couldn't call her. She had a procedure in place to respond if I didn't call her. I had a procedure in place to help her understand why I wasn't calling her. She understood the system. I could help her understand the system. I understood the system, but I never lost focus on what my goal is. And my goal would change at different times. Just like your goals are going to change at different times of the journey. The more you understand about that, the better off you are going to be. The more you understand that out here, you can get respect in a lot of ways. One of those ways is you get an education, you become a good father, you become a faithful husband, you contribute to your community, you contribute to your church, you're a teacher, right? You pay your taxes, whatever, okay? In prison, you get respect in a different way, okay? A lot of the people in prison get respect in a different way. They want people to fear them. They don't want people to respect them. They want people to fear them. So what's my advice? Give it to them, okay? You are not there to make friends. You are not there to run a popularity contest. You are not there to fit in with any group of people. You don't have the issue of racial complications that exist in higher security prisons, or political and geographical problems that exist in higher security prisons. You are going to be around minimum security people or low security people. And one thing all of you have in common, you all want to go home. But there are going to be some people in there that are idiots. Some people that are idiots that are serving time, some people in there that work for the system that are idiots as well. And if I understand that, I'm going to adjust accordingly. That's what critical thinking skills in prison is all about. It's very different. Out here in society, you're focused on making a career and building your business. In there, I want you to focus on coming home and never lose focus of that. So you want to understand who all of these, how your relationships are with all of these people and what you can do about it. And there's this great, social scientist tool that I found that kind of gives us this idea of understanding other people and understanding ourselves, right? According to this social scientist I read about, I think I read this when I was teaching some seminar to gang, what were they called, Kara? Gang interventionists. And it's helping us understand that there are things when we're interacting with people, this window that said, think of 4 different panes of windows, right? On one pane, you have things that you know and that others know about you. There's another pane in another quadrant of the window that says there are things that you know, but other people don't know about you. What? And then there's another pane that says there are things that others know about me or know about my situation that I don't know. Okay. And then finally, the 4th pane is there are things that you don't know and others don't know. Remember, I found that to be very helpful in dealing with volatile situations, right? What do you know? And everybody else knows. Well, everybody's going to know your gender. Everybody's going to know you're incarcerated. Everybody knows that. Okay. But what do you know and that others don't know? Others may not know what your motivations are, what your commitment level is, what your level of discipline, what's important to you. They don't know that. And they may want to invite you into their world. Okay. You've got to be strong enough to stay focused on what's important to you. There may be things that others know that you don't know. They know more about their environment than you don't because you just got there. They're going to know which staff members to avoid, which staff members to stick around. They're going to know which jobs are good, which ones aren't. They're going to know who's the influencer of the prisons. Who do I avoid? Who do I say, right? They're going to know those things. You don't know them because you just got there. And there's going to be things that neither you know nor others know. If you can go into that environment, what is that, for example? Well, neither you know nor others knows what changes are coming in the weeks, months, and years to come, right? Is the First Step Act going to change? Is the Keras Act going to get dissolved? How is the prison going to influence this thing or that thing? The more I know, the more I can influence my own adjustment. All of this should be strategic and should be deliberate, right? Just like you building your business was strategic and deliberate. You are now in the business of being the CEO of your life. And that CEO is understanding, how am I going to navigate all the injustices that I'm going to see? Okay. What do you anticipate seeing in prison? And how are others going to see you? Right? What do you anticipate? Do you anticipate the prison is going to be a really smoothly run machine that is there to help you get successful again and come back and nurture your family? No, don't go in there thinking that, because it's not. I've been home now for 9 years. Hey, you know what? Today's August the 13th. Today is 10 years ago today was the day my wife picked me up from a penitentiary and drove me to a halfway house. Always August the 11th, the 12th, and the 13th are important days. The 11th was the day I went to prison 35 years ago. The 12th was the day I finished my obligation to the Bureau of Prisons 9 years ago. And the 13th was the day I went to a halfway house. So I just realized that August 13th. But things change in prison. You don't know what's coming, but I guarantee you, you should be thinking about, what am I going to see when I'm there? Because you're going to see injustice. That's just, you're going to see it, right? I fight to work in changing these policies all the time, but that's my job. That's not your job. Don't go in there thinking you're going to fix changing all the wretchedness that you see. What do I mean by that? I get emails. I can't even keep up with all the emails that we receive. Why? Because I got a lot of books out, and 10,000 people see our stuff. So we get inundated with these emails, and we try to build this team of people to help us respond so that everybody feels heard and connected. But this is something at scale, right? It's not, I can't put out every fire. But we get emails from people that come in and they say, hey, can you help this person? They're in the hole and they shouldn't be in the hole right now. And it was a great injustice. It wasn't fair what happened. I can't solve that problem, right? And neither should they be sending me the information to solve that problem, because that person is creating a record. Every time she communicates to me and tells me how wretched the system is and how it's unfair, she is hurting herself, because she is sending that mail through a government communication system, and they have artificial intelligence reading every single word you write. So if you're in there crying and talking about how unfair it is and they shouldn't be doing this, guess what? That's life. You are not there to solve the problem for everybody that goes to the hole that shouldn't be going to the hole. Okay? Don't fight that battle. I'll fight that battle out here at scale. I can't do it for every individual because the system is designed that way. It is designed to have injustice. And our job is to get through it without those injustices making us stay in prison longer. So understand that you're going to find injustices, and you're also going to experience disappointment, because staff member, they're not lawyers. They're not people that are trained in, they're trained in BOP policy. That's their whole focus. And the BOP is in the business of saying no, right? If it wasn't in the business of saying no, you wouldn't need to be a part of this community. You wouldn't, why would you hire some guy that was in prison for 26 years? That doesn't make any sense, okay? But it's because the prison doesn't do what it's supposed to do, and we got to figure out, how do I fight that? How do I navigate that? How do I get through this in such a way? And so that's what a collaborative ecosystem that I'm striving to build, to help people solve these problems. But solving these problems requires a collaborative effort. You've got to understand when you're in there to use critical thinking skills and understand, in many ways, prison is just an adult daycare center, okay? It is just a place that you don't belong. I know you don't belong in prison, okay? Your family knows you don't belong in prison. Your kids know you don't belong in prison, but that's not really what's relevant. You're going to prison. I can't change that. A judge put that sentence in place. Let's get out of there as soon as we possibly can, and understand that Serenity Prayer, it says, I don't even remember, but God, give us the strength to change what we can and understand what we can, the power to accept what we can't. That's not a cliche. There is going to be change. It's neither good nor bad. It's just is. Let's understand it and let's conquer it together, okay? I can show you how, but you've got to go in there with a mindset, I'm going to daycare center, and you can't solve other people's problems. I don't want you to solve other people's problems. I want you to come home and join our team. If you want to become an advocate and do something like this, well, let's figure that out on the other side of the journey. But let's first get you through this. And that's what leads me to kind of this last thing here, which is I call the Quadrant Theory. Okay, I'd love to say I came up with this theory on my own. I'll take it off the screen so I can kind of talk with you, but you can kind of see there's another quadrant. I learned these quadrants, by the way, from this one I learned from Jim Cramer watching CNBC when I was in prison. And he was talking about how he makes financial decisions on investments. And he says there's going to be some divisions, some investments that have a high risk, low reward, some that have a low possibility, low risk, but also low possibility reward. And he would talk about high risk, low reward, might be investing in a startup, right? And angel investing, right? Massive risk. Yeah, and the guy's not a good founder, the low possibility of success. So problem for him. Low risk, low reward, he would describe maybe as a bond, right? There's no risk of buying a US government bond, but there's very little reward, right? Particularly in a high inflationary environment, right? There's high risk, high reward, right? Maybe investing in, I don't know, a basket of hedge funds or something, right? High risk, a lot of them are going to fail. One of them succeeds, you're going to crush it. And then there's high reward, low risk. Well, that same theory we can apply to decisions in prison, right? The more we understand that every decision I can put in one of these categories. Some of them are going to be high risk and low reward, right? Some decisions, for example, if I engage in contraband trafficking in prison, or I violate rules in prison, or try to make myself a person of influence in prison, that's a very high risk, okay? It's a high risk because I'm going to be dealing with a lot of mental midgets in there, and I don't want to deal with them. Let them have it. Prison is your world. You can live in prison. You can control the TV room. That's okay. My dignity and my sense of being and who I am is not going to be defined by whether I watch, the Dodgers this week, or whether I watch, ballet or music videos, or more likely Jerry Springer or Keeping Up with the Kardashians. That might be more likely what they're watching in prison. Okay, there's no upside in challenging that. So it's a very high risk, low reward. Because if I engage in a discussion about who controls the TV room, I've lost focus. But I'm trying to get out of prison, not watch TV. So think about those kinds of decisions. Another kind is low risk, low reward, right? What's a low risk decision, but also low reward? Well, it's to become depressed in prison. It's to become apathetic. It's to sleep all day and try to sleep through your time. There's a very low reward there. It's not going to help you. Okay, it's not going to get you out of prison. In fact, it could delay you because you're supposed to be building this record of gradually increasing progress in some kind of way, and you got to measure it. So I would call sleeping and apathy and depression and complaining low risk, low reward. Okay, high risk, high reward. Okay, well, for me, it was important to run businesses while I was in prison and build business. So I became a published author and built businesses and found ways to make money from prison. But there was a risk to that. The difference between anybody on this webinar and me is I was in jail for a lifetime. So it was different. I mean, I was always thinking about this. I was never trying to be a model inmate. I was trying to come back to society strong. And even though I'm going to serve a quarter century, I didn't want anybody to look at me and think I'd been in there a quarter century unless I controlled that narrative. So I was willing to take those risks. I published, I would get transferred from prison to prison. I would go to the hole, but I knew how to navigate that. I don't want to tell you what to do. I only want to tell you, understand what you're doing. If it makes sense, then do it. But understand, every decision comes with an opportunity cost. That's what critical thinking is all about. Then there's high reward behavior with a low level of risk. And what is that, right? If you spend your time writing, maybe you're writing out the business plan for the next chapter of your life. Maybe you're reading about very specific books that are going to help you get through this. Maybe you're focused on fitness and you may have lost a year in prison or 2 years in prison, but maybe you've become physically fit at an unprecedented level, which is going to be part of your release plan. Okay. You might develop your spiritual awakening in prison. You might really develop solitude. So I want you to think about all of these concepts when you're making every decision in there so that you can avoid some of the challenges that afflict every person in prison. So I'm going to look at my chat before I go to the next slide because I saw some things popping up. How do I know when to work on the Keras Act paperwork? That's a great question, and I'm going to show you in just a second. There's another question. I know you mentioned before that we should take with us when reporting copies of driver. Anything else? Let me show you. Let me respond to both of those questions by sharing my screen. Okay. So where do I go to do that? I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to report to the first one, and I'm going to share this screen here. And no, that's not what I want to share. The one that has Google Chrome. Share. Let's see. Share my screen and go to Chrome. Google Chrome. Is it that one? I don't know. I think this is Google Chrome. Share. So I'm sharing this screen and I want to go to release plan. Okay. I think if I show you here where I wrote about what you should bring with you on this release plan, if you click on this link right here, so I'm going to answer that question first. I'm going to include this on the webinar as well. There's a couple of things I've got to do before I send this out tomorrow. One of them is I know I have to write a piece on common fare food, but another one is this release plan, which I spoke about last week. If you didn't watch that video last week, I would encourage you to watch that video. So, or you can go up here to resources or blog, I think. If you go to blog today and you click on this link right here, you can come to this page and it says a release plan. And if you click on this sample right here, you're going to see it. I'm assuming you can see my screen right there. And I'm going to make it a little smaller so I can get the whole thing on there. And if you scroll through here, right? If you scroll through here, you are going to see these things here. I would like you, before you surrender, and I want to send this out in a Word format so you have it in Word. I don't know how to get it in Word to everybody at scale. I guess I know what I can do. I can send an email like I sent those joint that they're for everybody on the webinar. Hey, here's the release plan. I can send this to you in a Word format. So it's just like this. And you should be filling this out. I will just send you the questions and I will send you this PDF. But if you're surrendering to prison, I would take this Word document and I would answer all these questions, but don't only answer them as if it's a clerical exercise where you're just putting the stuff. Remember that this becomes the start. Let me see if I can make it a little bigger. This becomes the start of what you're going to be using to give to the people that judge you in the future. And I want you to make it easier for them. So when you asked, what should I bring? These are the things that you should have already copied on a piece of paper. Your driver's license image, your social security card image, your birth. If you don't have it, you can't do it. But if you have it, these are good things to have on there, right? If you have a support letter from your wife that says, or your family member that talks about, I'm here to help along the way with the reentry plan, this is going to help you when you're advocating with people that you're never going to meet. And there's going to be a lot of people that are going to have discretion over you that you're never going to meet. If you have a letter from an employer, great, include it. If you don't, not a big deal. Get one later. In fact, it might be better if you go in there and you don't have one, but the next time you see your team 6 months later, you do have one, because that's going to show how hard you work to get it. If you've got transportation, you want to answer these questions, okay? You want to have all this information there so the people that are judging you, they see that you are prepared, okay? They can see all of this information. So you don't have to write all this stuff down, because I am going to send this to you tomorrow. If you've got a housing situation, don't just write a one-sentence thing. Write a paragraph or so that describes your responses to all of these things. And remember, this is an iterative document. It's something that you need to be thinking about going forward. So look at all of these subheadings and try and address them before you surrender to prison, because it's a lot easier to do out here when you have access to a word processor. Just type it in, okay? You don't have to be a professional writer. You just have to be somebody who wants to show, I am thinking about my future. And then you have to update this every month, right? And then I gave that sample down here of like how I would have done it if I were in prison. You know, it's not how I would have, it's how I did it, right? So you can see these are just examples, right? That's what it says here. This is an example of my history. Your history is not going to be like this, okay? But every month, theoretically, your life should be changing. And if you've got a 60-month sentence, our goal is to get you out of there in 30 months. Or if it's Keras Act eligible, in 15 months, or whatever it's going to be, right? So the more you write here, the more you follow this template, the better skilled you are going to be into advocating for yourself. But you're also, if you look through this, and I promise you, I give you my word, I will send this to you no later than tomorrow with this webinar recording and also these assets that you can download. You'll be able to download them right from the email that I send.
And Michael,
Yes.
this is Jeff. So
Hey, Jeff.
on that information you provided, some of that information is going to be while we're on the inside, but on reporting is the copy of the driver's license, social security card, and things to that nature.
Yeah, because
Now,
it's going to be harder for you to get that once you're in there. So do it
gotcha.
now.
And on that form, but the make of the cars and all that stuff, should we bring that as well, or that's something we're going to be
I
updating
would
as well?
definitely put all of that in there right now. And if it changes, your wife sold the car, put that on there 3 months from now.
Gotcha.
Okay. So remember, I create these things, right? I create these things for a reason, right? You can see that there's always a lesson plan in them. Then there is a section there for writing. Okay. And the reason I do this is because I want you to think. You can't they will not allow a book to come in with all blank pages. Don't ask me why. It's just the stupidest thing in the prison system. So I used to always have this challenge of having my wife send me a day timer or something in prison because I wanted to have it in a central place, but they wouldn't allow it. So I create my own. That's what this thing is, right? I want you to think you're going to prison right now and you're going to have a meeting in 30 days. In 30 days, you're going to sit across a unit team. Remember, to that unit team, you are a number. There's no common humanity here. Or I should say, there are some people that are really nice. There were a lot of people that really helped me in prison. But I always plan for the worst. I plan for the worst situation, and then I'm going to succeed in there, and then it can only get better. So I want you to go in there, and on your first meeting, remember, this is recorded, so you're going to hear what I'm going to say, and you can figure out how to put it in your own words. But Jeff, you are my case manager. You've never seen me before. You don't know me. You don't know anything about me. You've got 100 people on your caseload, and every month, 30 of them are coming off, and 30 more are coming on. And you've been doing this for 7 years. Your staff members don't appreciate you. You don't like it. You know, you went into prisons to try and make a difference in the world, and you're finding out you're not making a difference because everybody keeps doing it. That's your mindset. Stop and accept that. Okay? I know that going in. So here's what I'm going to do, Jeff. I'm going to go in there and say, Mr. Madison, I know you don't know me. I know that you've got the government's version. I prepared this for you with hopes that it might help you with my release plan. And it's got all the information on it. So if you could just make it a part of my record and put it in my central file, I will update you the next time I see with what I've done differently. You just made that person's job really interesting, number one. Number two, you've made that person see you a little bit differently than it sees the other 99 people that come before them that just says, hey, when can I get out of here? It's not fair that I'm here. The Keras Act says I can go home. What are you putting me in, right? Fundamentally different approach, right? Critical thinking. I want you to go in there. Don't think about what you want. Think about what they want. Mr. Madison, I know that you've got a difficult job. I respect you. So let's start off with that. And I want it to not be a problem. That's why I took the time before I came in of creating a release plan. And I'd love if you would make this a part of my record. That way, I hope that you'll be able to see the progress I'm making along the way. Thank you. You've 10x'd your prospects for success with that person because you're not a pain in the ass. And they're used to dealing with a person who's a pain in the ass. Okay. Second, in 6 months, when you go back there, I want you to bring a new one. You may remember when I was here the last time, I gave you this release plan. Well, thank God for the Bureau of Prisons. I've gone through these other courses and they've really helped me really understand where I am. And I've updated my release plan and now it includes those courses that I've done. And so if you could update that, that would be great. And I'll keep a copy of it. And I'm going to write down that I gave it to you. You got that. Okay. And if somebody in the course of the month, a supervisor helped you or got you a job, I'm really grateful to Mr. Johnson because he gave me this job that I really wanted. And I think it's going to have a big influence on my release plan. And he's kind of coached me on that. And it wasn't something I ever thought of. So it gave me a new perspective. So grateful to him. Goes in. What are you doing? You're differentiating yourself from everybody else. Okay. In a positive way. That's powerful. So if you think about these things and you do that, you're month one, right? The soonest that you're eligible to come home, you're in a better position. Don't start asking about going home before you're eligible, before you've done anything, because now you're only thinking about yourself and the system doesn't work that way. And that's going to lead me to another question I got. How do I know when to work on the Keras Act paperwork? Well, remember this. It's very important to understand the Keras Act is an executive order. It exists today. Today it is the law. Today, if you're in there today, and if you are within 18 months of your release date, and you've served 25% of your sentence, that's the time to ask for Keras consideration. It's my hope that if you've done this work effectively, you don't even have to ask, okay? That's critical thinking. Put yourself in a position that you don't even have to ask. Because if you have to fight, it's harder, okay? Doesn't mean it's impossible, but it's harder. And there's only one mechanism to fight: administrative remedy. So I know that the person that asked me that question, I recall, I think, had a sentence of about, I think it would say 16 months, okay? So if you have a sentence of 16 months, you are within 18 months of your release date. If you're within 18 months of your release date, you are eligible by the guidelines, you're eligible to apply the first month you get there. But if you do, you better understand the complications of asking, okay? If you ask before you're eligible through the guidelines, you're in an entirely different algorithm. And that's going to be a big fight, okay? For example, I'm going to give you an example. I have a 16-month sentence. I go to prison and I know I'm eligible in 4 months, but I hate prison. And I want to get out the first week, okay? Well, that's not really tapping into critical thinking skills because you can't get out in the first week. The prison doesn't do anything in a week, okay? Except say no and put you in a different category. But let's say after a month, you think you're ready to go home. You'd better have a very good argument, okay? What's different in your life during that first month that makes you an exception to the rule, because that's what you're asking. I want to be an exception to the rule. So I'm going to ask to get out the first month I'm there. Well, the only way that's going to happen, they don't have the discretion at the local prison to let you out in a month. They don't even if they wanted to, they can't. It's got to go to Washington, D.C., to a division called the Correctional Programs Division. And the leader in the Correctional Programs Division then has to look at your case. They're going to have to talk with the assistant U.S. attorney who prosecuted you. They're going to have to ask the judge. Here's what the prosecutor is going to say, Your Honor, and Bureau of Prisons, the judge knew all of this at sentencing. So if the judge wanted him to serve 16 months, why are you going to let him out in a month? Do you know more than the judge? The answer is going to be no. They're not going to let you out. And then when you are eligible in 25%, you're going to be flagged. And they're going to check back with the prosecutor, and it's going to be harder. So the only time it might be appropriate to be an exception would be if maybe you had a 6-year sentence and your judge sentenced you, and 7 months later your wife is the only caregiver for your children, and she got cancer or she died, and now your kids don't have a parent. Something changed from sentencing. And maybe in addition to that, there's something changed in your life. Now you can write back to the court and you can try for an exception, and maybe you win. If you don't have that, stay with the guidelines. And the guidelines, if you have less than 18 months to serve, it's 25%. If you have a 16-month sentence, you finished in 4 months. Don't ask in 2. Don't ask in 3. Don't ask in 3.5. Don't even ask in 4. Use your critical thinking skills and do it this way. Go there with your established release plan. Participate in every course. Avoid disciplinary infractions. Pay your fine, whatever it is, to the extent that you're able. And then in a month, give them something new, a new release plan. And in month number 3, give them a new release plan. And then in month number 4, after you know that you have done 25% of your sentence, send a cop-out that very easily says, I fall now within the guidelines of the Keras Act. It's my hope that you will have submitted me. I haven't heard that you've submitted me. Please consider me. If they say no, then you've got to take the next step. And that's when you file the administrative remedy papers. You should have those administrative remedy papers done if you've got a short sentence like that, or close to being done, before you go in. And we have a lot of information to help, but nobody can file that but you. Your lawyer can't file it. We can't file it. Only you can file it. We can help you prepare the package, okay? But at the end of the day, it's you that's doing it. You have to make sure it's right, and then you can submit it with supporting documentation. But please don't submit it beforehand, because it's only going to be a problem. So to answer your question, the person who asked, it's if you have under 18 months to go, you're eligible at 25%. If you have more than 18 months, then you're eligible at 50% for Keras Act. But Keras Act is not the only game in town, number one. And number two, Keras Act may not be here in a year. I don't know. I don't know what President Biden's going to do. It looks like it's going to be here. The BOP is stopping visiting and things of that sort. So it looks like, but the Keras Act was not a congressional law. The Keras Act was, a presidential order, an executive order, and the president can dispute it with a pen. You can't do that with the First Step Act. First Step Act is a law passed by Congress. So much more complicated and very beneficial. Okay. But we always are anticipating problems in the Bureau of Prisons, and we're going to figure out, okay, what can we do? So let me look at some other questions I got here. How do I know in the Keras Act paperwork? I know you mentioned before we should take with us. Okay, I addressed that about what to take with us. Not clear on how to get it into prison and edit it. I'm most likely going from detention to prison because bail for a foreigner is such a pain. Great. You can start preparing it now with our team, okay? And we will send it to you in the mail after you surrender. I don't want you to bring it in there with you. When you get there, when we know what your sentence length is, not in the detention center, okay? Oh, we can send it to you in the detention center just so you have it. But ideally, you're getting this when you're in prison, in the mail. So you would work to get it closely ready, your release plan, before you go. Oh, no, we're talking about detention. I'm sorry, I was unclear about what you were asking. You want to have this done in the detention center, your release plan. So let me send it to you in a Word document in the email that's going to come from me tomorrow, maybe today. And then you're going to elaborate on it. But I don't want you to think this is the final document, right? This is just going to be, you're starting, you got to grow it. And when you're in prison, you're going to have access to the email system. So I'll also include, I got to remember in these notes, I better make some notes here about what I need to do today, so I don't forget. I need to put in here copy of Word doc on release plan. That will be there. PDF on release plan. I promise to do, what do you call that kind of meal? Common fare meal. I'll be talking about that meal on release plan. And whatever else I can remember. How to get it into prison. And then we will send them to you in the mail. So it's one of the things that we do. You won't be on webinars, obviously, once you're in prison, but we still send stuff in through the mail. So you get it in the mail. What was the next question? Yes, release plan. Okay, Victoria, a couple of questions. One, in your first webinar, you talked about making sure the prison we are going to has all the necessary papers when we surrender. How do we do that? Okay, that is a great question. And since I recorded that webinar, I interviewed a former warden who gave us an update and said, that's not really necessary anymore because they've updated the computer paperwork. So it's all digital now, where it used to be paper, right? But now it's PDF and digital, they said. So the Bureau of Prison is very archaic, and they used to send these things through the marshals and through mail, but now it's digital. So before you get there, it will be there. What I also say though in that webinar is have a plan. So if you, in the first webinar, you talked about making sure the prison we are going to has all the necessary research. How do we do that? You remember, you can't control what they do, but in the interview, and it's the interview on subject matter expert page, the one I did with the warden Scott. He said that doesn't exist anymore because of the new computer system that they've implemented. But I would always prepare that plan. My recommendation in those webinars is have a plan. You need to know that and your family members need to know that when you get to prison, you're going to have an ability to interact with them, with your family. And you're going to be able to have an ability to either, you are going to be able to send an email or send a phone call, or there's going to be somebody there that wants to help you. And for example, if I was there and Jeff was already there, I would say, Jeff, I don't have access to the phone. Could you have your wife call my wife and let them know I'm okay until my phone turns on? Great, it'll get done. The only alternative is quarantine. If you're in quarantine, it doesn't really matter because you're going to be in a segregated housing unit anyway, or in a quarantine area anyway. So your paperwork is going to get there. We just want it there on hour one. And according to the warden, it's always there now. Can you tell me on how to select your housing unit, and can you make a cellmate who are like-minded? Good question. My understanding is that they will assign us the calculator fixed. Yes, the calculator's fixed. I would love it if all of you there? Yeah, can you hear me? Oh, two things. So how do we know that? Can you please, how to select? So when you get to prison, you are in what's called an A&O classification, admissions and orientation. And yes, they will assign you to an area where everybody's kind of new. So it's very random. Okay. But that's a temporary thing. During that first month, while you're going through admissions and orientation, you are going to have to find a job. And during that time, you will make some friends. Okay. Just be very cautious in those friends. Like, don't let people force themselves on you. You're a good judge of character. You will find somebody that's of like mind and like heart, and you will know that in a few conversations. They start asking questions about your case and things of that sort, they're not your friend. If they're saying, hey, I noticed you just got here. I know how traumatic, I just got here 6 months ago. Here's a package that we put together for you, my friends and I. And it's just got a toothpaste and a toothbrush and some slippers for you to use. I hope it makes it easier. That's a nice person, right? That's the nice thing to do. And that's what people will do. Those people will say to you, would you like to take a walk around so I can show you the place? And you will, and you walk. The only thing you want to be cautious about is complaining. It's not fair what happened to you. Seek first to understand before you seek to be understood. And through that process, you will have a friend. You'll find a friend, and you'll find somebody to help you get through this journey. And friends are good, that's it. So you asked also about the calculator. Let me see if I can share the calculator. Could somebody give me, let's just go through it together. I'm going to show you where. So I got to go back to Google Chrome, share, and I'm sharing here. I'm going to go to the release plan. And I'm going to go back to the blog. This was really a pain to put together, this calculator, but it should be working. But here's what I would ask all of you to do. Go through this. You can click right here. If you're a man, click right there. If you're a woman, click the other one. And I would encourage you today, go through this. Learn about this pattern score, because if you learn about this before you get there, you're going to be better off. And then scroll through it. I got to make a new video because now that we've changed the calculator. But get your pattern score by answering these questions. I'm not going to do it for now because it just takes too much time. But once you've got your pattern score, it'll show up right there. Insert your information. So I'm just going to do a sample. If I had a 60-month sentence, and if I surrendered on September the 1st, okay, I would just click that calendar and I'm going to do that, right? Plug a date, September the 1st, October the 1st, whatever. If you have jail credit, right? If you've already pleaded guilty even though you were only there for an hour or so, 2 hours, that's a full day of jail credit. If you spent any time in a detention center, that's 1 day, the day you got there, the day you woke up, that's a second day. If you were there past midnight, that's a full day, even if you got out at 12:01. So if you have any of that, plug that there. If you're over 60, plug that there. If you qualify for RDAP, plug that there, and then hit this. And then this calculator is going to spit out a bunch of information. The reason it has different information, sometimes in days and sometimes in months, is because some of these calculations are by the day and some of these calculations are by the month. It's important to remember these are just projections. We're projecting, okay? But you can say, okay, that's my sentence length in days. That's the amount of statutory good time I would get on this variable. Me having a 60-month sentence, I'm going to get 9 months statutory good time. I'm going to convert that to days. That means I've got 273 or so days of statutory good time. This is, of course, assuming you don't get in trouble. If I don't do anything and I surrendered on that day with 60 months, that's when I'd get out. Okay. If I was RDAP eligible and I did it, I would get out this day. And that's going to take into consideration my statutory good time, my jail credit, the day I surrendered, and the 12 months I got off for RDAP, but it doesn't include earned time credit because I can't do that until I do the earned time credit. So those dates are important. The Second Chance Act is going to be based on these dates. Okay. But then I get down in here into this more complicated thing of earned time. So I know I have 60 months, but I know on 60 months with this information here, I'm only going to do maximum. Maybe I can only do so many months of programming. I know that I'm going to get 9 months minimum that I'm going to get because RDAP, I also get credit for this as well. I know that I'm going to get credit for every other month of this. So let's say I'm going to get 15 months of credit of these earned time credits. That's going to give me this information here. That's another 225 days that come off my sentence. So those are 7. That means I get 7 more months off of my sentence. So now I could revise the total time owed to the Bureau of Prisons. I owe 31 months. That's how much I'm going to owe in calendar months. I don't have any remainder days because you can get the first 12 months of earned time credits. That comes off my sentence, right? 7. If that was a longer term, and I'll give you an example of that in a second, I'll show you how that would change. But for this person, it doesn't matter. So here's the sum of all the time cuts I'm going to get off my sentence, 28 months. And if I add this and this together, I get 60. Okay. So here's the projected time that I will spend in a secured BOP facility before I transition to an RRC. On a 60-month sentence, under this scenario, not counting the Keras Act, I'd get 31 months. Okay. But if it was the Keras Act, that comes down here, it would be 50%. I'd get out here, this date. This is the day that I would go to a transition without Keras Act. So that's how this calculator works. I would encourage you to play with that calculator. And if you have questions on it, we can go over that next week, assuming you're still with us. Are there any other questions before I hang up? All right. It's Saturday. It's my man Jeff's last Saturday with his family. I hope you have a good one, my friend. And I hope you have a successful journey in prison.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
Yes. And you'll be on our email list, so you'll be hearing us the next time through regular mail and through email. But I hope your family knows that they're always welcome to be on these webinars and connect with us that way as well. But I just want to thank everybody for being a part of our community. I see that there was one other question just popped up about your group hiring after when it can get a letter stating the Norwich Group of Transit sooner by showing employment waiting. Arthur, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, I think so. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
hear you now.
Okay.
How long is your sentence, Arthur?
15 months.
And so you're kind of in that same category where you could be eligible to get out in 4 or 5 months.
Maybe.
Why don't you
Mhm.
send me a personal email to
Mhm.
michael@michaelsantos.com. Okay.
Yeah.
And just give me a little scenario about what you do and your expectations are, so I could ask you some questions, because then maybe I can help you, because you're getting kind of close that this letter would be helpful to you. I would use this letter. I would want you to have this letter say like 2 months down the road, and I'll tell you why. Because I don't want you going in there having all the problems solved, right?
Yeah.
It's iterative. You want to solve them gradually. But let's talk about it and get it ready. So send me that email and I'll respond. When do you surrender? Do you know?
Not until October 19th.
Great. So we've got time to work on this and we'll get it done together. All right.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Have a great weekend. And I really appreciate all of you. God bless.